Hello, Mansa McLeaners. Today we are going to talk about the Industrial Revolution. And this event was the most drastic change since the Neolithic Revolution. There were many causes to the Industrial Revolution, such as favorable natural resources in Britain, agricultural revolution, growth of large manufacturing businesses, huge advantage in world trade, their technology developments, and government support of the businesses. First, for natural resources, there was an increase in coal production. All right, they had a lot of coal in Britain, which helped them which fueled the Industrial Revolution as coal. Here's a picture of children coal workers. You can see that they were going down getting the coal, but you can see the black smut that was all over them from the coal. All right, next was the agricultural revolution. As you look here, you can see the yields of from the cotton production, right? So it's gone up, the amount of food that they were able to produce during this new revolution, and it was because of the new techniques and practices. All right, one, they did enclosure. All right, so they enclosed the farms. All right, so before, people, like, the farmlands were just open. Now people would make it private property, right, and close it. They also learned how to do crop rotation, which made the soil better, and the uses of horses in order to farm. All right, in 1700, which would be about here, 80% of the population earned their income from farming. By 1800, all right, only 40% of the population earned their income from farming. All right, and so even though the production went up, there was less farmers, and that was because of the new technology used for farming. And this new agricultural revolution is going to lead to an increase in productivity of the food and a decrease of food prices. And so now if people had more money, because food prices were less, they could use that money to buy manufactured goods, which would fuel this industrial revolution even more. But also, if you have less workers working in farms, they need somewhere to work, and they would be able to go work in these factories. All right, the third cause I mentioned was the large manufacturing. And so before this, things were produced with the cottage industry, meaning things were made at home, all right, or homespun clothes, things like that. And it was a part-time, or sometimes it was full-time work by families, but women, children, things like that would do it at home, all right? And so what would happen is they would advance this into being made with machines. All right, then fourth, we said the huge advantage in world trade. And that was from this trade from the previous era of coming to the Americas, right? That gold and silver and things like that, the cotton, all that they were getting from their discoveries last era, during the early modern era, where Britain went and colonized different places. All right, and then also we had the governments. All right, the government supporting businesses. All right, so they would make a central bank, which would help finance these things. All right, in the credit market. And the government would also encourage technological change. All right. And the government would also invest in transportation, such as railroads, canals, and better roads, which would all help fuel this industrial revolution. All right. And as industrialization took place in that agricultural revolution that we just previously mentioned, you see the population of Great Britain is going to grow. All right. The more food, especially getting the more food from the Americas as well with that Columbian exchange. It's going to cause this population to grow, which is going to create a good workforce to fuel this industrial revolution also. All right, and then the last cause, we talked about the technological advancements. And here's a look at some of these advancements. All right, the first industry to start to advance with industrialization was the textile industry, or the cloth industry. All right, and so you see down here it gives the names, but at the top we have the spinning jenny. All right, which one worker could run 8 spindles of thread. All right, you got the water frame, which was a machine for spinning and using water, but it used water power for spinning. All right, and then you have the spinning mule, and then you also have the power loom. All right, which is here. All right, the power loom would come a little bit later. All right, but the spinning mule, this one was lead to the start of factory work. All right, then just here's a look at the factory work. This one is going to be one of the big ones that we're going to talk about later, which is the steam engine invention, and also the locomotive or train, all right, which would use that steam engine power. So this industrial revolution led to the factory system, people working in factories. And you can see down here, it talks about, as the years went on, the number of workers that started to work in these factories. Now, this early factory that you can see here is located near a river, because the early factories, they needed hydropower in order to run the factories. If you've taken a visit to the Hagley Museum here in Delaware, you can see how that was ran off of the water power from the Brandywine River. But after the invention of the steam engine, these factories could move to different places, didn't have to be near the water. And that is going to lead to this urbanization of people moving to the cities in order to work in these factories. All right, but with this urbanization is going to come many problems, all right, such as overcrowding, poor housing and sanitation, a rising crime rate. And not until later, once we start to get sewer systems and housing regulations, would things get better in the cities. But here's a couple pictures you can see of the problems that they had. All right, and down here to the left is a look at what were called tenement homes. All right, these like homes that were like a single room, but the family would all gather in there. And it would be, you know, they would sleep, they would eat, and all these in these small tenement homes. And one of the problems you see, like street level here, where people would throw their trash. If your tenement was street level or below ground, you would often get a lot of, waste from the streets that would like creep into your walls or seep into your walls. And it was just not a good living situation. Another big negative to the Industrial Revolution, as displayed in this picture, is the amount of pollution. All right, especially using coal to power a lot of the factories and things like that. It would lead to a huge amount of air pollution in the cities. The Industrial Revolution is going to bring widespread change to society. All right, not only just living in the cities, all right, urbanization, but a lot of just widespread changes. The first is women and children are going to be working in these factories. All right, the problem is they're going to get paid less, and many are going to be moved from their homes and live in factory dorms to make it to work faster and easier. Work's going to become unpleasant, right? The workers are going to be separated from the family. Before, when they were on the farm, it was kind of like a family thing, but now you had to be restricted by time. All right, so now clocks and watches are going to become important because people have to be to work at certain times. Before, when you were just a farmer, you kind of work at your own pace. All right, there was poor working hours and wages, and there was no insurance. So if you got hurt on your job, you would lose your job in these factories. Now family life is going to change too. Women are going to be working outside the home. And there's not a need for as many kids, right? People in the city would have less kids because, one, it was harder to take care of them, but also they didn't need a lot of kids to work on the farm. So family life would look a lot different now after this industrial revolution. All right, another big change is there's going to be new wealth. All right, a new group is going to emerge, which is going to be the middle class. And that's going to be from the wealth that they're going to gain from being, managers and things like that inside of these factories. And now there's going to be a new stress on education because the middle class is going to stress their children get education so they don't end up with these low-wage factory jobs. All right, other cultural changes. Other cultural changes include going to the movie theater. All right. Also, advertising. Newspapers are going to become popular, right? You'll get the newsies, which would be kids that will go around selling these newspapers. Radio and motion picture, organized sports. All right. Baseball, soccer, boxing, horse racing will become popular. And family vacations for like the wealthy and middle class would also become popular. Being tan would be a sign of wealth, because that would show that you were able to go and on vacation. All right. Other changes: people's life expectancy would increase. All right. They would do more science. Louis Pasteur, he would discover germs. All right, and they would start to clean up the cities. So life expectancy would go up. They would start to use vaccines for people, and the birth rates would go down, but there would be more people because the death rates for children would decrease. All right, the infant mortality would decrease, so there would be more people. All right, and as you see with this poster here with unionization, that's going to be a big change that's going to happen in response to these working conditions in the factories. People are going to unite and unionize for better wages and better treatment in the factories. All right, to get insurance if you get hurt. You're also going to get conflict with economic systems. All right, Karl Marx here, who writes the Communist Manifesto here, is going to argue for socialism and say that there's conflict between the workers and the owners, and that the only way to change it is to go to more of a socialist system to stop this revolution from occurring between the workers and the owners.